Once, in a kingdom ruled by wolves and whispers, an Alpha King sought a bride to save his dying realm. She arrived veiled, timid and silent, a mystery wrapped in moonlight. But beneath the veil lay a power older than the crown itself, a truth destined to break his heart, and much more. Scroll 1. The carriage wheels creaked like dying wolves, and Elara, or rather the girl who had been forced to become Elara, couldn't help thinking how fitting that was for a funeral procession, masquerading as a wedding convoy. "Stop fidgeting, girl!" hissed Lady Morgrave from across the velvet bench, her eyes like chips of black ice. "You represent the crown now. Act like it even if you weren't born to it." "Especially because I wasn't born to it," the false princess thought bitterly, pulling her hood lower over her face. The thick fabric scratched against her cheeks, but she welcomed the discomfort. Pain reminded her she was still alive, still herself, even if that self had been buried beneath layers of silk, deception, and a curse that wrapped around her tongue like iron wire. Her real name tried to surface in her throat. She swallowed it down, feeling the familiar burn of magical compulsion. The sorceress's curse was thorough. Speak her true identity, and her mother's heart would stop beating. Her father would choke on his next breath. Her little brother would simply cease to exist, erased like morning frost beneath harsh sunlight. So she was Elara now. Princess Elara of Thornwick, the realm's acknowledged disappointment. Too plain, too shy, too everything wrong for a proper royal marriage. The real Elara was probably laughing in whatever luxury she'd run off to, having traded places with her former lady-in-waiting 3 nights ago, in a scheme the cursed girl still didn't fully understand. One moment she had been the princess's loyal servant, brushing golden hair and listening to complaints about the beastly wolf king she was being forced to marry. The next, the sorceress Ravenna had appeared in a swirl of purple smoke, and her world had shattered like dropped crystal. "Remember the rules," Lady Morgrave continued, consulting a small leather journal. "You do not remove your hood until the unveiling ceremony during the blood moon. You speak only when directly addressed by the king. You keep your eyes downcast. You are humble, modest, and utterly forgettable." "Won't be hard," the girl muttered. "I've been practicing being forgettable my whole life." Lady Morgrave's painted lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "There's truth in that tongue of yours, girl. Best keep it locked away with the rest of you." A howl split the autumn air, close enough to make the horses whinny nervously. The false princess's heart leaped, and without thinking, she pressed her hand against the carriage window. Beyond the glass, the forest of Durnfell rose like a wall of teeth in shadows, ancient pines stretching toward a sky already darkening, though midday had barely passed. This was werewolf country now. The kingdom under the moon, they called it, where pack law superseded royal decree, and the Alpha King ruled not by birthright alone, but by fang and claw, and the ancient bond between wolf and man. Alpha King Lucien. Even his name sounded like a growl. Is he truly as fearsome as they say? The question escaped before she could stop it. Lady Morgrave studied her with an expression impossible to read. "They say he killed 17 enemy wolves in single combat during the border wars. They say his beast form is larger than any werewolf in living memory. They say he can smell a lie at 50 paces, and has never taken a lover who didn't bear his mark by morning." The girl's mouth went dry. "Oh. But they also say," Lady Morgrave continued, her voice softening almost imperceptibly, "that he honors the old ways. That he's fair to those who show him loyalty. That he loved his mother dearly and wept openly at her funeral, caring nothing for who saw his tears." She closed her journal with a snap. "Make of that what you will." The false princess wanted to ask more, but another howl answered the first, then another until the forest sang with lupine voices. The sound raised goosebumps along her arms and stirred something deep in her chest. Something that had been sleeping until now. A wet nose pressed against her thigh, and she looked down to find Moondancer, her wolf companion, staring up with those unsettling amber eyes. The wolf had been the only thing she'd been allowed to bring from her old life, perhaps because even Ravenna's cruelty had limits. Or perhaps because the sorceress knew that taking Moondancer would have broken her puppet entirely, and a broken puppet couldn't play princess. The wolf's thoughts whispered into her mind. Their bond was strong enough for that much at least. You hear them. They're calling you home. This isn't home, she thought back. This is a cage made of crowns and curses. My grandmother had a saying, Moondancer's ancient consciousness murmured. The cage you see is not always the cage that holds you, and the freedom you seek may wear chains you never noticed. The girl frowned, scratching behind the wolf's ears. That's either very profound or complete nonsense. Most deep truths are both. The carriage jerked to a halt, and Lady Morgrave peered out the window. We've arrived at Moonhaven Castle. Remember everything I've told you. Your life depends on this performance. Not just my life, the false princess thought, touching the cold spot over her heart, where the curse nested like frozen shadow. Her family's lives. Every breath they took was hostage to her obedience. The carriage door swung open, revealing a courtyard of polished stone and gathered wolves. Dozens of them, in human form but unmistakably predatory, their eyes reflecting the torchlight like scattered stars. And standing at the center, towering head and shoulders above his pack, was a man who could only be the Alpha King, Lucien. Even from this distance she felt the weight of his gaze, though she couldn't yet see his face clearly. Power radiated from him like heat from summer stones, and every instinct she'd developed as a servant, stay small, stay invisible, survive, screamed at her to flee. Instead, she stepped down from the carriage, her hood secure, her fate sealed, Moondancer pressing close to her side. The ugly duckling had arrived at the wolf's den. Let the performance begin. Scroll 2, Lucien had smelled worse things than disappointment, but never on what was supposed to be his wedding day. The scent rolled off his gathered pack in waves, pity mixed with barely concealed amusement as the hooded figure descended from the carriage, like a shadow given human form. His beta, Theron, shifted weight beside him, diplomatically silent, but radiating. I told you this was a terrible idea with every breath. She's rather small, Theron finally ventured, which was generous, considering what Lucien could hear others whispering. Words like mousy and unremarkable, and his personal favorite, delivered by his cousin Thorn with characteristic tact. Well, at least she came with a decent-looking wolf. The white wolf padding beside the princess was indeed magnificent. Too magnificent, actually, for a mere pet. Its amber eyes held an intelligence that made Lucien's own wolf stir with interest, recognition, something primal that whispered pack, pack, not quite pack. But the girl herself was buried so completely beneath that ridiculous hood and those shapeless gray robes that she might as well have been a traveling monk. He couldn't even catch her scent properly through the overwhelming perfume of whatever oils they'd doused her traveling clothes in. Lavender and something else. Something that made his wolf pace restlessly. Your Majesty, Lady Morgrave announced, executing a perfect curtsy that her charge attempted to imitate with less grace. The hooded girl wobbled slightly, and her wolf steadied her with a gentle nudge. May I present Princess Elara of Thornwick, your betrothed? The princess, if one could call this trembling creature such, curtsied deeper, and Lucien caught the briefest glimpse of a pale chin and lips pressed together so tightly they'd gone white. Fear scent bloomed beneath the perfume, sharp and unmistakable. She was terrified of him. Good instincts, his wolf rumbled. Weak prey should fear predators. Except she wasn't supposed to be prey. She was supposed to be his mate, his equal, his queen. The alliance with Thornwick required a royal marriage, and he'd accepted his duty with the same grim determination he'd shown on a dozen battlefields. But he'd hoped for someone with at least a spine. Someone who could stand beside an Alpha King without shaking like a leaf in winter wind. Someone like the woman in his dreams. For 3 months now, she'd haunted his sleep. a wild-eyed maiden who ran with wolves under the full moon, her hair streaming behind her like dark water, her laughter fearless and fierce. He'd wake with her name on his lips, a name he could never quite remember, and the bone-deep certainty that she was real. She was waiting. She was his. This hooded sparrow was not that woman. "Welcome to Moonhaven, Princess," Lucien said, his voice coming out harsher than intended. He watched her flinch and felt a stab of irritation. At her? At himself? At this entire cursed situation? "I trust your journey was pleasant." Yes, Your Majesty." Her voice was barely above a whisper, muffled by the hood. "Thank you for your hospitality." "Ancestors preserve me," Lucien thought. "She sounds like she's thanking me for her own execution." Theron cleared his throat. "Perhaps the princess would like to refresh herself before tonight's welcoming feast? The journey from Thornwick is long and—" "Yes," Lucien interrupted, probably too quickly. "Excellent idea. Lady Morgrave, please show Princess Elara to her chambers. We'll convene at moonrise." He turned on his heel before anyone could respond, striding back toward the castle with Theron hurrying to keep pace. Behind them he heard Thorn mutter, "That went well," followed by someone's poorly suppressed snicker. "Don't," Lucien growled as soon as they were out of earshot. "Don't what?" Theron asked with infuriating innocence. "Don't mention that you looked at your future bride with all the enthusiasm of a man facing root canal surgery? Don't point out that you couldn't get away from her fast enough? Or don't remind you that this alliance is the only thing standing between us and another war with the southern Pax?" Lucien stopped walking, bracing his hands against a stone pillar. The wolf inside him snarled and clawed, wanting to run, to hunt, to find the Moon Maiden who surely existed somewhere beyond these political games. "She's not her," he said quietly. "Not who? The woman from my visions. My true mate." The words sounded foolish, spoken aloud, but Theron had been his friend since childhood. If anyone would understand, it would be him. Theron sighed, running a hand through his copper hair. "Brother, I say this with love. Your dreams are not a mating agency. This princess, odd as she may be, is real. She's here, and she's your duty. Sometimes the moon gives us what we need, not what we want." Very philosophical. Did you steal that from a fortune scroll? My mother, actually. She also used to say, "A wolf who chases moonbeams will starve while rabbits run past his nose." Theron clapped him on the shoulder. "Give the girl a chance. Maybe under all those ridiculous layers there's someone worth knowing." Lucien doubted it, but he nodded anyway. Duty was duty, even when it wore an ugly hood and smelled of fear. What he couldn't know, what none of them could know, was that in her chambers, high in the eastern tower, the false princess stood before a mirror with tears streaming down her face, while Moondancer pressed against her legs. The curse mark over her heart burned like ice, reminding her that she was trapped, that speaking the truth meant death, that the king's obvious disappointment was perhaps the kindest thing anyone in this castle would offer her. And somewhere in the space between their separate miseries, the blood moon continued its patient climb toward fullness, counting down to an unveiling that would shatter everything both of them believed about duty, deception, and destiny. 3 weeks until the ceremony. 3 weeks until the truth would howl. Scroll 3. The welcoming feast was exactly as terrible as the false princess had imagined, only louder and with more teeth. Werewolves, she discovered, ate like they fought, with enthusiasm, aggression, and absolutely no regard for table manners. The great hall of Moonhaven Castle rang with laughter and howls, the pack celebrating their alpha's impending marriage with entire roasted boars and enough ale to float a ship. She sat beside Lucien at the high table, still hooded, still silent, picking at her food like a bird, while he radiated cold displeasure beside her. He hadn't spoken to her since the courtyard. Hadn't even looked at her, really, except for one assessing glance that had clearly found her lacking in every possible way. "You should eat," Lady Morgrave murmured from her other side. "You're thin enough to blow away as it is." Hard to have an appetite when you're the evening's entertainment, the girl whispered back, nodding toward the pack members who kept glancing their way, their expressions ranging from curious to pitying to outright amused. One particularly bold wolf, the one called Thorn, she thought, raised his goblet in their direction. "A toast," he bellowed, "to our Alpha King and his lovely bride. May their union be as fruitful as it is unexpected." The hall erupted in cheers and laughter. Lucien's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his bronze skin. The false princess felt heat creep up her neck, grateful for once for the hood that hid her burning face. "Thorn," Lucien said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Perhaps you'd like to volunteer for Dawn Patrol? I hear the eastern border needs watching for the next month." The laughter died. Thorn paled and sat down quickly. Beside her, the girl heard the king mutter something that sounded suspiciously like, "insufferable fool," though she couldn't be certain if he meant Thorn or himself. When the meal finally ended, after what felt like 17 years, Lucien stood abruptly. "The princess requires rest. Lady Morgrave, please escort her back to her chambers." No good night. No attempt at conversation. Just dismissal, swift and brutal. The false princess rose on shaking legs, curtsied to no one in particular, and fled the hall with Moondancer at her heels, and her dignity in tatters. That, she told the wolf once they were safely back in her tower room, was humiliating. Moondancer's response was to pad to the window and stare out at the rising moon, nearly full now, its light painting the forest silver. The girl moved to stand beside her companion, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. From this height, she could see the entire kingdom spread below. The wild woods, the distant mountains, the courtyards where wolves in human form still celebrated their alpha's joyless betrothal. "I can't do this for 3 more weeks, she whispered. "I can't sit beside him while he looks at me like I'm something unpleasant stuck to his boot. I can't pretend to be someone I'm not while everyone laughs at someone I'm not actually being." "Then don't pretend," Moondancer's thoughts whispered. "Not out here. Not tonight. The curse says you cannot speak your true name or reveal your identity. It says nothing about running with the moon." The girl's heart leaped. How long had it been since she'd let herself simply be? Before the curse, before the deception, she'd spent her nights roaming the forests near the palace, her bond with Moondancer allowing her to share the wolf's senses, to taste freedom in great gulping mouthfuls. They'll see me. They're all drunk on ale and celebration. And you have a hood. Use it. 5 minutes later, the false princess slipped through a servant's entrance into the castle gardens, her cloak wrapped tight against the autumn chill. Moondancer led her through shadowed paths to a small gate that opened onto the forest beyond. The moment she crossed the threshold into the wild, something in her chest loosened, released, breathed. She pushed back her hood, letting moonlight touch her face for the first time in days. The cold air kissed her skin, and she laughed, actually laughed, spinning in a circle with her arms outstretched while Moondancer bounded around her in joyful circles. "Just for tonight," she told the moon, the trees, the watching stars. "Let me remember who I was." She ran. Not gracefully, not with any particular destination. Just ran through the silver-washed forest with Moondancer racing beside her. Her breath came in great gasps, her heart pounded, her feet flew over roots and stones, and for the first time since the curse had stolen her life, she felt wonderfully, brilliantly alive. She didn't see the root that caught her foot, didn't realize she was falling until she hit the ground hard, tumbling down a small embankment in a tangle of limbs and leaves. When she finally stopped rolling, she lay on her back, staring up at the moon through a canopy of branches, and started laughing. Great, gulping, slightly hysterical laughs that echoed through the quiet forest. "Very dignified, Your Highness," she told herself, still giggling. "Truly, the grace of royalty knows no—" A low growl froze the words in her throat. She scrambled to sitting, heart hammering, and found herself staring at the largest wolf she'd ever seen. Its fur was midnight black, its eyes molten gold, and power radiated from it in waves that made her wolf-bond senses scream, "Alpha! Alpha! Alpha!" Lucien, the king, had followed her, or had been out here already. Either way, she was caught, unhooded, her face bare to the moonlight, and those golden eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that stole her breath. For a long moment, neither moved. The forest held its breath. Moondancer pressed close, silent, but protective. Then the great black wolf did something unexpected. It sat down, tilted its head, and made a sound that wasn't quite a growl. More like a question. "Who are you?" And the false princess, caught between terror and something that felt dangerously like hope, whispered to the night, "I wish I could tell you." Scroll 4. Lucien had been running the northern ridge when her scent hit him. Wild honey and night-blooming jasmine, completely different from the perfumed oils that had masked his bride at dinner. His wolf had gone absolutely mad, practically dragging him toward the source, and he'd been powerless to resist. Now, staring at the girl sprawled in the moonlight, leaves in her hair and mud on her cheeks, he finally understood why. She was the woman from his dreams. Not similar, not reminiscent. Her. The fierce-eyed maiden who'd haunted his sleep for 3 months, though in his visions she'd been running wild and laughing, not flat on her back looking terrified. But it was impossible. His betrothed was plain, mousy Princess Elara, currently locked in her tower chambers. This girl had the same scent signature underneath all those oils. He was certain of it. But she couldn't be both the timid creature from dinner and this wild thing caught in moonlight. Could she? The white wolf beside her growled a warning, and Lucien forced himself to shift back to human form. He kept his distance, crouching low, acutely aware that he was completely naked, and she was staring at him with eyes like embers in the dark. "Easy," he said softly, the way he'd gentle a spooked horse. "I'm not going to hurt you." "You followed me." Her voice was different, too. Stronger, clearer, without the terrified whisper from the feast. "I was running." "You fell practically on top of me." He paused. "Why are you out here, princess?" She flinched at the title, and something flickered across her face. Pain, fear, something deeper he couldn't name. "I needed air. The castle is suffocating. So you decided to go tumbling through the forest like a drunken fawn?" To his surprise, she laughed, a real laugh, bright and unexpected. "My dismount needs work. I'll grant you that." Lucien felt his wolf preen at the sound. "Make her laugh again," it urged. "She belongs to us. Ours, ours, ours." He shook his head, trying to clear it. This was insane. She was his reluctant bride, the alliance marriage he'd accepted with all the enthusiasm of a root canal, and yet his every instinct screamed that she was his mate, the other half of his soul, the... "You're staring?" she said quietly. "You're beautiful." The words escaped before he could stop them. Her eyes went wide, and even in the moonlight he saw color flood her cheeks. No, you don't have to. I know what I am," she stammered, moving to pull her hood back up. "Don't." He shifted closer without thinking. "Please, let me see you." She froze, hand halfway to her hood, trembling. "Why?" "Because I've been dreaming of you for 3 months, and I'm trying to figure out if I've gone completely mad or if you're real." The confession hung between them like morning mist. Her white wolf made a sound that might have been approval or warning. Lucien couldn't tell which. "You dreamed of me?" she whispered. A woman running with wolves under the full moon, wild and fearless and free. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "But you're supposed to be some timid princess who can barely string 2 words together, and I don't understand what's real and what if both are real?" The question came out barely audible. What if someone could be 2 different people? One they're forced to be, and one they actually are? Lucien's wolf went very still. He studied her face, the delicate features, the storm-gray eyes, the way she held herself poised between flight and fight. "Are you in danger?" he asked carefully. "Yes." The word was immediate, certain. Then she seemed to catch herself, shaking her head frantically. "No. I can't." She pressed a hand to her chest, gasping, and he saw her face contort in pain. He was beside her in an instant, steadying her. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," she managed through gritted teeth. "Just, there are things I can't talk about. Questions I can't answer. Please don't ask me to explain." Her white wolf pushed between them and Lucien reluctantly released her. But not before he felt it. A cold spot over her heart, a wrongness that made his wolf snarl in recognition. "Magic. Dark magic." "Someone cursed you," he said flatly. She went very pale. "I can't." "You don't have to confirm it. I can feel it." He paced, anger building. "Who? Why?" "Please," she whispered. "You're making it worse." Every word makes it tighter. He forced himself to stop, to breathe, to think like an alpha instead of a wolf scenting his mate in danger. "All right. No more questions about the curse, but answer me this. When you're in that tower, playing the timid bride, is that who you really are?" She met his eyes, and he saw defiance there, and sorrow, and something that looked like desperate hope. "No. And this?" He gestured to the forest, the moon, her wind-tangled hair. "This is real?" "This is all I have left that's mine." The raw honesty in her voice cracked something open in his chest. Without thinking, he reached for her hand. She let him take it, her fingers small and cold in his. "Then we'll find a way to give you more," he said. "I don't know what game is being played, or who cursed you, or why you're pretending to be less than you are. But I swear by the moon and my pack, I will figure this out." She looked at their joined hands, then back at his face. "Why would you help me?" "You don't even know me." "Yes," Lucien said quietly. "I do. Maybe I'm the only one who does." And there in the moonlight, something shifted between them, fragile as spider silk, strong as steel, binding them together in ways neither fully understood. 3 weeks until the blood moon. 3 weeks to unravel a curse and find the truth. The hunt had begun. Scroll 5. The blood moon rose like a promise and a threat, painting Moonhaven Castle crimson. 3 weeks had passed since that night in the forest. 3 weeks of stolen moments and careful deception. By day, the false princess remained hooded and silent, playing her role as the timid bride, while Lucien treated her with cool formality before the court. By night, they met in secret, and he learned the truth in fragments she could reveal without triggering the curse. He knew she wasn't born royal, knew she'd been a lady-in-waiting, knew someone she loved was being held hostage to ensure her cooperation. But her name, the full story, the identity of the sorceress, all remained locked behind magical chains. Until tonight. The unveiling ceremony will break the curse, Theron had discovered, buried in ancient pack law. When a bride shows her true face under the blood moon, all deceptions must fall away. It's written in the old magic. Now, standing in her tower chamber, while Lady Morgrave prepared her for the ceremony, the girl who'd been forced to become Elara felt the curse writhing beneath her skin like something alive. "You're trembling," Lady Morgrave observed, fastening a silver circlet over the hood. "Nervous?" "Terrified," she admitted. "When the curse breaks, everyone will know I'm a fraud. They'll call me a deceiver, a traitor. Perhaps." The older woman's voice was surprisingly gentle. "Or perhaps they'll see a girl who sacrificed everything to save her family. My mother used to say, the truth is like moonlight. It shows both beauty and scars, but at least you see clearly." Before the girl could respond, trumpets sounded. Time. The great hall had been transformed, its ceiling open to the sky, the blood moon visible through enchanted glass. Every member of Lucien's pack lined the walls, And at the center, beneath the moon's crimson gaze, stood the Alpha King himself. He wore ceremonial armor that caught the red light, making him look like some ancient war god. But when his eyes found hers across the crowd, she saw only concern and something that made her heart race. Trust. She walked forward, Moondancer beside her, each step feeling like walking toward either salvation or execution. Princess Elara of Thornwick, the pack elder intoned, his voice carrying through the hall. You come before the moon to bind yourself to our Alpha. But first you must be seen. Show your face and speak your truth, or this union cannot proceed. Lady Morgrave stepped forward to remove the hood, but before she could, the great doors exploded inward. Ravenna swept into the hall like a nightmare given form, purple robes billowing, power crackling around her fingers. Beside her, beautiful and cruel, stood the real Princess Elara. "Stop this farce!" Ravenna's voice boomed. "That creature is not Princess Elara. She's a common servant, a deceiver who stole a royal identity." The hall erupted in chaos. Wolves snarled, shifting between forms. Lucien moved to stand before his bride, protective, defensive, his wolf rising to the surface. "Explain," he growled at the sorceress. "Now." "The real princess stands here," Ravenna gestured to the blonde beauty beside her. "This hooded rat is merely a pawn who agreed to take her place. A fraud wearing a crown she has no right to." The real Elara smiled, cold and sharp. "I couldn't marry a beast, so I found someone desperate enough to do it for me. She always was pathetically eager to please." The curse mark over the false princess's heart burned like ice and fire combined. She gasped, falling to her knees, and felt something inside her beginning to shatter. "What did you promise her?" Lucien's voice was deadly quiet. "Her family's lives," Ravenna said carelessly. "Speak her true name, reveal the deception, and they die. Simple, really." "You're monsters," Theron snarled. "We're practical," the real Elara countered. "The alliance is what matters, not which body wears the crown. Just kill the servant and marry me properly, Alpha King? I'm much prettier anyway." The false princess looked up at Lucien, tears streaming down her face, expecting betrayal. Instead, she saw fury, not at her, but for her. "Here's what's going to happen," Lucien said, his alpha command rolling through the hall like thunder. "That woman," he pointed at the real Elara, "is not welcome in my kingdom. Take her and get out." "You don't understand," Ravenna hissed. The alliance requires I marry Princess Elara of Thornwick." Lucien turned, extending his hand to the hooded girl. "And that's exactly what I'm doing. This woman came here in good faith, bearing the name and title of princess. She stood in the gap to save her family. That takes more courage than any royal I've ever met." "But she's a fraud!" the real Elara shrieked. "No," Lucien said softly. "You are. She's just someone who got caught in your selfishness." He knelt beside his bride, gently pushing back her hood. "I don't care what name you were born with. I care who you are. And the woman I've come to know these past weeks is exactly who I choose. The moon brought you to me. That's all the truth I need." The blood moon's light touched her face, and the curse shattered like glass. The false princess screamed as the magic broke, but instead of pain, she felt release. The icy grip over her heart dissolved. Her real name flooded back. Aria, daughter of servants, keeper of wolves, beloved by the moon. And in the breaking, power surged forth. Ancient magic that had always lived in her blood, suppressed by the curse, now blazing free. Her eyes lit with silver fire. Her skin glowed with moonlight. Moondancer howled, and every wolf in the hall answered. "Impossible," Ravenna breathed. "You're just a wolf maiden," the pack elder whispered in awe. "Born of the old blood. Rarer than royalty. Blessed by the moon herself." Aria looked at Lucien, finally free to speak her whole truth. "My name is Aria, and I think I've been yours since the beginning." He grinned, fierce and joyful. Finally. A proper introduction. Their kiss tasted like moonlight and freedom, and outside, the blood moon approved.